Well, when you hear that music, it's going to be a good time because it is time for another edition of the Rec Poker Podcast, Forums Edition, just to see how many times I could say times and edition in one sentence. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluffsterini in the home games at Hold'em_Steelers. And just like every week, we are in here talking with a panel of wizards about a forum post from rec.poker. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and website AMP. And I'd like to thank this field of furry friends for joining me, starting with the one and only Chris Jones.
I'm Chris Jones, 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter.
I'm John Somsky, Poker Geek MN everywhere.
And I'm Rob Washam, Radman50 everywhere.
And I say furry friends because there is some very high quality facial hair on display with this particular panel. A very hirsute group, if I do say so myself. So every week we get together and we talk poker. We pull a strategy post from the forums at rec.poker. And while we're playing in the nightly home game to beat each other black and blue, we go over it. So tonight, we are actually looking at a post by the one and only Radman50 himself, who's calling in from all the way down there in sunny Las Vegas. Rob, tell us a bit about this post, what made you decide to put it up there, and what we learned.
Well, what we learned is you should never just mechanically do things. You should think through your actions before you do them. I think this happened in a live tournament. So we've been playing for quite a while. Blinds are 800, 1600 with a 1600 ante. I was in the big blind and I had 32 big blinds left up against the villain in the middle position with 40 big blinds. He raises. Now he's been very active. He's been very loose, calling down very light. So when he opened to 3 big blinds, I chose to just call from the big blind with my ace king rather than getting into a raising war pre-flop, which I probably should have thought about potentially putting in that 3-bet from the big blind. Anyway, so what happens is I have ace of clubs, king of diamonds, and we see a flop of ace of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. I was the first to act. I've got top pair, top kicker, the nut flush draw. I've just flopped the world. I'm feeling like everything is coming up roses. So I donk jam my 27 big blinds into the pot of 10.5 big blinds. I think that was a mistake.
So where should
and everybody I talk to agrees.
So Rob, you said you felt like in retrospect you were playing kind of robotically. How long had you been in the session? Tell us a bit about the context of your
well, let's see, it's a 20 blind level and they start at 100. We're at the 800 1600 level, so we've been playing for a while. We've been playing for probably 4 hours by now. I know we've gone through at least 1 break, maybe even 2. So, it's a well-structured tournament. It's quite, they don't skip very many levels as you get up there. So, we've been playing for quite a while. And I think after a while, you just kind of get into the zombie mode where you're just kind of reacting to what's going on around you instead of thinking. I still had a pretty good feel for the players and how they were playing and whatnot, but I don't think I was concentrating enough on ranges and bet sizing and that sort of thing. I was just kind of mechanically doing it.
And it's nice. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just going to say that's what I call that, being in that mode, autopilot. Yeah. Where I just go on autopilot and it's like all of a sudden I have 3-bet king 9 offsuit under the gun and I'm wondering what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. I'm thinking of a number of ways I could have played this hand differently. As I think about it, it doesn't really change the actual results of what happened in the hand. I think this would have ended the same way no matter what. But I think I just this, what I did was wrong. And so that just makes it feel worse.
Yeah, yes, yes,
You
yes.
know, I mean, it doesn't, like I say, I don't think it changes the actual results of the hand at the end of the day, because I think it would have played out the same way. But I did make some bad decisions, and so I'd like to talk about it a little bit. What would have been the better decisions?
This is what makes Rob such a great player, because he doesn't want to talk about the hands he's won. He wants to come in and talk about the hands that he can learn something from. So that's what we should all have, that kind of learning mentality about learning from our mistakes and looking for ways to improve. That's how you get better. Chris looked like you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, well, the thing, you know, in your own description, the thing that you wrote was MP has been loose and has shown the propensity to call very light. And so that is the so like I'm of two thoughts. When I'm at this stack level, I actually kind of like working in ace king sometimes as a big blind flat like you did. I like that because it's something that, you know, people don't put you on it when you hit a hand like this. It's sometimes harder to get. If I'm up against an opponent who has not been loose and has not shown a propensity to call down light, I may choose to flat with this kind of hand. So I don't actually mind the flat in, like, it's not like this is a universal 3-bet, but once you say that, now I want to jam this like pretty badly, because I would love to be called down light in this spot because I've got a pretty good hand. So I mean, that initially that's my thinking, is that.
So you're thinking pre-flop, you might want to just jam 32 big blinds in there?
Yep.
Yeah,
Because I don't. I mean, we could raise. We got, what do we have 32. We could raise this to. I mean, we're out of position. We've got to raise it to 11 or 12. I mean, I suppose we could do that. We could get away. We could still have a 20 big blind stack, but you know, I'm
20
probably
big blind pot then too, right?
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I suppose, you know, we could find that kind of a raise. I think those are probably the two options there. But I against a player who's shown just a willingness to sort of call, I kind of want to get it in if I could.
God, I didn't even
once
think of that.
once we do flat, and we get to this flop, yeah, I want to check for sure, like with my entire range.
And just for our audience, so the flop is ace of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. We're holding ace of clubs, king of diamonds. So we do have the redraw to the nut high flush. And listeners who were with us a couple weeks ago, we talked about a similar kind of spot with a monotone flop where we were in a position not dissimilar from this, and except in this case we've got top pair, top kicker, and the redraw to the nut flush draw, to the nut flush.
Yeah.
So
Flop the world.
you
It is
really
pretty sweet
did,
flop.
right?
Yeah, this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
see.
yeah, I mean, it's an exciting spot.
For me, the problem is, so now you've got the flop. Excellent flop. This is the type of flop and the type of hand that I would love to be calling someone's all in, because you probably have more equity against them than they think they do, and you're beating all of their bluffs, and you have a great chance to draw out on any of the value hands that are there. If you decide to bet this, what can possibly call you? I mean, the only hands that can call you really are a made flush or a set. I mean, you're only going to get called by things that have you beat. There's nothing that you beat that should be calling you on that particular board. Now, unless this guy is that particularly loose where he'll continue at this point. Well,
yeah.
So yeah,
Then
if we can
maybe.
get called by, we can get called by a worse ace, ace queen, ace 10, can find a call if we shove here. I don't know. I mean, But aren't those hands going to bet into us anyway?
Well, yeah, they were the initiative. They did have the initiative. So I think game flow says I should have probably just checked this flop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd be inclined. I mean, I love a good check raise, so I feel like this would be a good spot where you might be doing this with some bluffs, and so they might be more inclined to actually call the check raise with some of those hands that feel like they might be ahead. You're ahead of all the draws, which is really nice, of course. So we got some good questions. We got some good comments in here. So Monkey System, our friend Keith, says that he's jealous because he wants to be in Vegas too. And then he does some really good work breaking down some of the different options here. So I encourage our listeners to go to rec.poker, check out the forums there. This post is called MTT Standard Play. Jacob Kiki also has a great breakdown here, and Taylor Moss adds some excellent notes as well. The consensus seems to be that jam pre is the best option. I mean, I think there's some value to a smaller 3-bet size there, but with those stacks, you're going to be out of position. Yeah, I mean, I do like the jam there. What do you guys think about that? Just from the standpoint of sizing pre-flop, is there a non-jam sizing that we like there, or is it just jam or call?
I never, when I'm this deep in, and when I've got 32 big blinds, so I'm not in one of those short stack ninja modes yet.
Mm-hmm.
That we've been going through, and so I wasn't even thinking in terms of jamming, even over a open. He opened. This could be a perfect re-steal spot, but I felt my holding was too good to really, I didn't feel it necessary to jam. Now, if I'd have been holding something like pocket tens or pocket nines, that might have been a hand that maybe I want to go ahead and jam over the top. But with ace king, I'm thinking, yeah, let's see a flop. And if I get something favorable, then yeah, let's go. It's go time. And if I don't, I can get away from the hand, and I'm down to 29 big blinds, and I'm still got a decent stack. So
yeah, and when you do have 32 big blinds, I mean, that's a big enough shove that a lot of the dominated aces probably fold. So you're kind of getting to that point again where they're only really continuing with a very strong range of hands. And I think you're still probably better than break even against that range given the pot size, but it's not like that bread and butter spot where you're like, I've got 20 big blinds and there's an open and I'm out of position. If you were in position, I could even see you raising to like 8 or 9 and then being able to play in position. You'd have some fold equity on that. But out of position, it feels like a deep shove, doesn't it? But it's still, I feel like given the options, it feels like it's the right. Would it matter to you guys if it was suited or versus offsuit? Like, is this one of those stack depths where you're more inclined to call when it's suited for playability, or is it with the stack depth where you're more inclined to shove suited to get the extra 3% equity when they call? Because Chris, you talked about maybe having a calling range here with ace king in it sometimes.
Yeah,
look inside your heart. Is it suited or not suited, that ace king?
Typically, if I'm calling, it's gonna be not suited. I would say, like, that puts me in sometimes the opposite of
I was gonna say
of a lot of players. So, and I understand that, but I tend to flip those around a bit. With suited, that might be the type of hand where I feel comfortable going to that smaller 3-betting size. Because I don't want to I don't think I want to shove aces here necessarily. And so I need to have some hands that I'm willing to kind of go to a smaller 3-bet size that aren't just exclusively aces. And so I would probably lean to sort of some of those suited ace king, ace queens as kind of those smaller 3-bet sizes. Is at least my initial thinking. It's a tricky stack depth. It really is.
And stack depth comes into it for me a lot. When I'm deeper, specifically talking about ace king, when I'm deeper, I'm more inclined to call with ace king suited and to 3-bet with ace king offsuit, because it's not an all-in 3-bet.
Right.
When I am shorter and the shove is the decision, I'm much more happy to get that suited ace king in because it's got more equity, and you
Right.
are now in a position where you're actually going to realize that equity one way or the other.
Right.
And when you're shorter, I'd rather have that happen pre-flop.
Yep,
And
agreed.
when I'm deeper, I like to see if I can actually get a flush out of there. Which let's take a second and see if Jonathan Little agrees, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the post-flop stuff here.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call?
It's like he's
What do
listening
you do
to
with
us.
ace king when you miss the flop?
Wait a second, this is us.
Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
He makes a pretty compelling argument, folks. What to do? Should you call? Should you 3-bet? How to play that suited flush? I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about. So thank you, Jonathan Little, for that input. So as played, we call. And I think, there's an argument for that because you're keeping their range in a spot where it's dominated by your holdings. You're at a position which isn't great, but whatever. We're here to play poker, right? So the flop comes, again, just for our audience, we have the ace of clubs and the king of diamonds, and the flop is ace of diamonds, jack of diamonds, 7 of diamonds. So we've got the redraw to the nut flush. We've got top pair, top kicker. So there's 10.5 big blinds in the pot. We've got 27 behind, and our villain covers. It's a monotone flop. A couple weeks ago in the forums episode, we talked about how most of the time we're going to be checking here as part of our natural flow. So I think there's sort of like a conventional argument for just playing this as like a check and then either jamming or calling when we expect them to make that c-bet. Does anyone here think about, so there's the open jam, which is what Rob elected to do here, top pair, top kicker in the redraw. Is there a smaller sizing that we might consider in our leading range here? As played, it's a donk. Is that going to elicit the kind of responses that we want from our opponent, or is it better to have this as a shove or just a check?
Well, the responses that we got out of the forum were it should be a check on the flop. If I didn't jam pre-flop, I mean, a lot of people are saying, let's jam it pre-flop. And if you don't, if as played on the flop, I should have just checked. Been a great opportunity for a check raise, which might have looked much stronger than my jam pre-flop. It may have changed the outcome of the hand. I don't know. But there's a possibility that my opponent would have saw that as much stronger than my pre-flop or my donk jam.
Yeah, I think a donk jam looks even weaker than just a donk lead. And both of those look weaker than a check raise. And your hand really is strong enough that you can withstand the check. Because if it goes check, then odds are you've got the best hand at this point. So yeah, I think check with the intent of raising is probably my preferred line there.
Well, you know me, I've never met a check raise jam that I didn't immediately fall in love with. So I'm pretty easy to.
Would you check raise jam? Let's say he c-bet to say 5, 6 big blinds. There's 10 in the middle.
Well, we would know immediately that it wasn't Kim Pet Vet back there making the bet because it's half the pot size. So we can immediately eliminate that. 27 back. I mean, I probably do.
Mm-hmm.
So the check raise jam all in.
I think that's my play because I'm going to be doing that with some other weaker hands as well. And so this feels like a good hand to have in that range. That has, I mean, it's a pretty sweet hand for this flop. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like to me naturally in like the flow of the moment, I probably play that as a check jam along with a bunch of other garbage, but don't tell anyone. What about you guys? What do you think post flop here? What's your preferred line?
Yeah, I agree. And the only reason I would very rarely lead into this flop. If I ever did donk lead, it would be small, and it would be because I had an opponent who, if this opponent we have says a propensity to call light, it would be one of those opponents that I read as like going to take offense at my small donk lead, and because I'm looking for every opportunity right now to get all the chips in the middle. And if I'm beat, I'm beat. But this is too good a hand, and I think the best way to do that is through a check raise.
Yeah, that's a good point because even though I mean, I'm not sure who actually has the nuts advantage here as played, but you do want to get all the chips in the middle, right? Even though you've got top pair, like it's not like you have the flush. You have a one pair hand, but I think you do want to get all the chips in the middle here. So the question is, how do you get all the chips in the middle in a way that doesn't happen only with their strongest hands? So how do you get the chips in the middle in a way that makes them and contort their range to include more of their weaker hands in that range when the chips do go in the middle? So that feels like letting them c-bet. Again, in a vacuum, like I know we're not considering every factor, but letting them c-bet puts more of those chips in the middle, and then it makes the stack to pot ratio smaller when you do make that jam. And I mean, as it turns out, they're going to call. They're going to call anyway. So I don't know how important it is to make that stack to pot ratio any smaller, but I mean, they might have come along with an even lighter range of fans. Rob, do you want to drop the devastating news on our listeners for how this?
Yeah, it was. He was definitely one who calls very loose. He had a ace 10, spades, clubs.
So you're loving life, right? This is
I'm going. So this is great.
He calls light. Perfect. We got the shove
double
called.
Up, baby, double up.
Go.
And then I get the bad news on the turn when the other black 10 shows up.
Yeah, you don't even get the 10 of diamonds.
No. No.
And then they may just sweat the river too, eh? But no diamond on the river to come save you.
No diamond on the river, no king.
No.
And so I tapped the table and went to my room.
Ever the classy player, Rob Washam.
Well,
knows how to leave the table.
Well, yeah, and so like I said at the beginning, I don't know that anything I would have done would have made a difference. How the hand played out. Let's say that I made a normal 3-bet pre-flop. He calls. We get to the flop. We get this flop. We go all in. Same thing happens. Let's say as played, I checked. He bet. I check raised all in. Same thing happens.
Yep.
If it somehow went check on the turn, and he turns 2 pair on this board, and I still have ace king with the nut flush draw,
right?
There's nothing stopping me from getting it all in. So no matter how I played it, I think the results would have been the same. But I think there's some options that I didn't consider in the moment that I wish I would have.
Boy, that's why I love working with this guy. Yeah. Like you were kind of screwed no matter how this hand was going to go out the way. Like
Yeah.
honestly, you were. There's just no getting
Yeah.
away from it.
Yep.
And in fact, you got exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
I wish you the blessing of having this go this way all the time up to the turn, right?
If I can play this kind of player every day of the week, sign me up. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
sometimes I'll tap the table and go home, but most of the time it's going to be really good for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's a good example of how you can find ways to learn even from hands that you couldn't have played any differently, or that wouldn't have mattered if you'd played them any
The
differently.
results wouldn't have been any different. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So big credit to Rob for bringing this in. It's not the kind of hand that you play and then you're obviously thinking, oh, I got to analyze this later. These are the kind of hands that people lose and then they tell everyone how unlucky they were and then they move on to the next hand. So kudos, bud. I'm glad we got a chance to talk about this. So any other thoughts on I know we've been on a bit of a monotone flop kick for a while, but it's because it's such an interesting spot. It's the spot that I feel like people make more errors on flops like this than they do on other boards. So it's a good spot to have thought about these kind of things in advance.
I don't know. I think I tend to be an equal opportunity error maker.
Doesn't matter what the flop is, right, John?
Yeah, I'll find a way to make an error.
You'll find a way. You'll find a way. That's great. Well, if you want to find your way to smallbusiness.com, you can work with Steve Fredland, our fearless leader. He likes to help folks with small businesses move from chaos to confidence in this new world. So I'd like to thank smallbusiness.com. I'd like to thank Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, Website Amp, my buddies Chris Jones, Rob Washam, John Somsky, Steve for putting this whole thing together. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to you soon.